Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Dan Banchero Show, only on YouTube. I'm your host, and probably the nicest guy you're ever going to meet, Dan Banchero, coming to you live from the beautiful Edgewood Park in San Carlos, California, the city of good living. Nice, peaceful night here. It's about 5 o'clock or so, and you hear a little chirping of the birds, a little rustling in the leaves there, little critters. So, got to take some time out to get back on the timeline. 2015, we're going to be starting. We left off at the end of 2014. What a disaster. I was on my way to the Hilton Palm Avenue in San Mateo, California, their famous detox facility. And things were looking better, then they got worse. And the battle in my mind wasn't over with. I was still resentful, jealous, and wasn't feeling too good about situations. So, through this timeline, I realized how much I've gone through in the last 13 years, let's say, of this journey of getting clean and sober. And I ran into some people last week. Unfortunately, we lost Manny Pitts, one of my former classmates from Mills High School. And life is very short, and it's unfortunate when we get to this point in our lives where we only see people at funerals or in sad events. Sometimes we'll see them at weddings or special events, but some of the people I ran into last week, I haven't seen since my buddy Jeff Wright's funeral back in 2009, and it's a shame, but one thing to remember about funerals is that when people's lives are celebrated, that means they touch people, and through their death or their celebration of life, people get together. And it's good to see Randy and Ryan Lask, Mike Borg, Mickey and Shandy Thompson, Donald Farina, Joey Estelita, Rich Daly, Rocio, Beth, Mel, Monique, other people I went to school with. I haven't seen face to face in many, many years. Didn't really get to talk to all y'all. If you're watching out there on digitally and listening, it was an unfortunate circumstance, but it was good to see all of you. And you just never know what's going to happen. And I'm glad that I was able to change my character and able to create a new legacy, if you will. And so Manny, thanks for being who you are, man. You'll be greatly missed. Me and you always had fun when we were together. We had some parties at Green Hills Park with some funny lines at our keg parties. Anyway, so back to 2015. So I ended up going to Palm Ave Detox. I remember my buddy Michael B threw me in the back of his, actually might have been in the front of his van. He had all of his drumming equipment in the car. And he had the drums and the cymbals, and I'm all disoriented. I'm fumbling around. I'm knocking his stuff over, his instruments and his equipment. And he's yelling at me, "Dan, what the hell are you doing?" He's getting all mad at me. And prior to that, I'd interviewed at Project 90. My sponsor at the time, Pete C, had picked me up from Tracy and Molly's house, and they took me over to the intake interview over Project 90, and I began the process. And I had nowhere to go at the time. There was a waiting list. So I had no other choice, really, but to go to Palm Ave Detox. I didn't want to. But I was taking the advice of my other sponsor at the time, Mike R. and Pete C. And I decided to go. So I went to the treatment readiness groups on Saturday mornings. And I remember the first treatment readiness program preparation meeting. It was a Saturday morning. I showed up, and Ken R. and Jim S. are there. They're running the show, letting everybody know what's going on with Project 90. And I'm loaded out of my mind the first one I go to, right? So I show up, just blasted, plastered, wrecked, wiped out, okay? And there's a circle of guys. They're all trying to get into the program, and we go around why we want to get in the program. We're getting an idea of how the program works, and people are sharing. I remember at the end of the meeting, we circle up, we hold hands and say the Lord's Prayer, and I'm all ripped out of my mind, and I get on my hands and knees, I'm saying it, and everybody's looking at me and snickering, and it was a bad scene. But I got into Palm Ave Detox, the Hilton Palm Avenue, And I remember Michael B. and my lover at the time, same woman I was speaking of a couple episodes back, and she wanted me to fix her. Well, all the fixing was over with, and she had enough, and Mike had enough, and the other people were just like trying to help me get somewhere safe to recollect my thoughts and get sober. And I got taken over there and dropped off, and I was just in all this self-pity. I was just like, no, I don't want to go to my 6th rehab, man. This is not what I want to do. You know, it's like I kind of knew what to expect, but I was so screwed and so incapable of living in the real world. I had to do it. And you know, I finally just got the visitation I wanted from the courts, and I still was holding on to that resent towards my daughter's mom, and justifying my feelings. And I got arrogant about it, like I said in the last time we were in the timeline episodes, and I ended up drinking, and I lost it all again. So I went to this detox for 23 days. They call it being posted, right? So I was in charge of like handling the kitchen and preparing the meals and stuff based on my restaurant background, and I was able to apply my skills I acquired over the 17 seasons I spent behind the Leonardo's Cafe counter, from Lenny, Gary, and Michelle, and working with Eric and Nancy and Lou and Jesse and others. And so I befriended several men in that 23-day period that eventually would be in program with me. Now, many of you know that over the years I was not much of a movie buff, and Palm Ave Detox not only gave me time to get a little bit less cloudy in the mind, but I got caught up on a bunch of movies I hadn't seen ever that people frequently mocked and laughed at me about, that I hadn't seen some of these, you know. And, you know, so some of these movies include like Caddyshack, 5 of the Star Wars films, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Top Gun, Hot Shots Part 2, Billy Madison, Happy Gilmore, yeah, so on and so forth. You get the gist of it. So I didn't see any of these movies. And I'm 36 years old. You'd think that I would have seen some of these movies by then, but I didn't, you know, because I was all about partying and having a good time. And, you know, I like to play video games and watching sports. So, so I'm in this Palm Avenue Detox, right? And I'm with all these other sickies, and they're all coming off the booze and the dope. You know, some of them were coming off of the meth. There was a few alcoholics like myself at the time, because at that part of my life I was off the drugs, but I still had turned on the booze. I don't remember too many people who were into the arm candy, but I believe there was a couple. So yeah, I'd be so bored out of my mind being at Palm Avenue Detox for 23 days. I know many of you listeners probably are familiar with it, who are in the addiction and recovery movement, who've been there. You know, I don't even smoke cigarettes. I couldn't wait for smoke breaks just to be able to go outside and watch, you know, because I was so tired of being in there. So I watched them take a few puffs every hour on the smoke break. And so after the 23 days, I finally got placed in Project 90, and I still was not happy. I was not grateful that I had shelter and had another chance to start over and do this thing again. So I wasn't looking at the beauty of this new beginning, because I was so disgruntled, and I was in the self-pity, and, you know, my ego and my I don't want to say I was macho, but I was disgruntled with the food. I was in disbelief. I was in the 6th stint in rehab. I was judging some of the other clients, you know, for their behavior, their character, or one reason or another. I was judging why they were even there. I knew some of these guys were trying to beat cases. They were sincere about it, you know, and I was like, man, the solution's in the steps, you know. So I was angry because I'm in these groups, and then I was in the center for the first 30 days of the O'Toole Center there on 9th, and then I got moved to the corner house across the freeway on the east side of 101, and I'd spend all this time walking back and forth 3 times a day. I'm like, I'm spending 3 hours walking as opposed to being in groups, and I'm like, I'm more prone to relapse than anything else doing this, you know. So I felt like I was spending more time walking back and forth and doing like chores and cleaning up than I was in actual recovery and the solution and learning about myself. So I was able to see Stella on Thursdays. We'd have these dinners at the O'Toole Center before we'd go to celebration at Friendship Hall on Thursday nights. So I was seeing Stella at the time. It was very brief. Her grandmother would bring her, and I remember in that period I'd found time to go to the library and do my taxes. I got my tax return, right, and I think I got back like $1,200 that year, maybe 14. I don't remember. And after like 6 weeks, you know, I had been meeting my sponsor Mike R and my other sponsor Pete C, and they were coming and they'd meet me together or one-on-one. We'd go through the steps some more and do some more book work. And so then after a certain period, you're able to go off on your own on weekends. So I would go down to San Carlos Peninsula Fellowship on weekends and hit my groups that I usually would go to, right? So I had a plan one day. It was in the middle, I want to say the first or second week of March. And I met Pete after a meeting on a Sunday afternoon at 4:30. And I went to Carl's Jr. We sat, we went over the normal stuff we normally did. Now, the solution is to reveal everything. Don't tell half-truths. Talk about your feelings. Talk about what's going on so somebody can present you with a solution, right? Or a spiritual solution, at least. And I wasn't talking about how I felt about it. I was wasting time. And I was just kind of just hanging out at Project 90. I didn't feel like I was getting anything out of it at the time. So I wasn't being fully honest because I wasn't fully disclosing what was going on. It's very important to disclose everything. So I'm giving them these half-truths, and I told him I was doing okay. And the minute he left that table, I had two choices: get on the bus and get back to Project 90. And as soon as he drove off, I just had this anxious feeling like I didn't do what was right. And I wasted this man's time. I did not tell him what was going on with me. I marched right down to 7-Eleven. I walk in there, I grab my tall cans, and as I'm walking out, my buddy, the late Colin R., the captain, he sees me, right? And I got this bag full of booze. I didn't tell him I did, right? And he asked me, hey, what's going on, Danny? How you doing? You know, and I completely bullshit him. And I said, it's going okay. You know, and he drove off, and it was on. I was through. I started drinking, and I went on a 10-day run. I didn't return to Project 90. I spent this 10 days drinking on the bus, drinking public restrooms, taking this tax return. I'd go to Celia's, I'd get a pitcher of margaritas, I'd eat all this food, I'd go to burger joints, and I would just isolate and hide. I had the same outfit on for 10 days, right? And I remember one or two of those nights, it was past midnight, and I wasn't going to steal alcohol. So it was past 2 a.m. to buy alcohol, right? Let me tell you how sick I was. I took that tax return. I went to Big Five. I bought 2 separate sleeping bags, okay? I had one stashed at the Palo Alto Transit Center, and I had another one stashed over by the creek at the San Carlos Peninsula Fellowship, where I used to reside at in 2014. Just because this is what I was used to, this is what was comfortable, right? So if I wasn't sleeping on the bus, I'd have the sleeping bag stashed somewhere depending on where I got dropped off or how loaded I was. And I remember there was a doctor's office next door to the creek, so there were some other homeless guys who had taken over my old spot, and they had put up some barbed wire and make it a little bit harder for people to get away with camping out over there. So I'd sleep at this parking lot over at the doctor's office, or I'd sleep at the top of the steps of the San Carlos Peninsula Fellowship, right? And I'd set my alarm so I'd get up before the morning meeting where people are coming up to make coffee. And this went on and on and on. And there was a couple nights where it was past 2 a.m. I couldn't buy anymore, right? And I wouldn't steal. And I'd walk into Walgreens in San Carlos, and I'd buy the Advil PM, knowing there was alcohol in it, right? And I just wanted to sleep. So I'd pound in the Advil PM, bottle after bottle. And I'd go back in, and the clerk would be like, didn't you just buy some of this? You know, and so he might have known, but he might not have known. And one morning I woke up, and I didn't feel too hot. So I want to say like day 7 or 8 of this run I'm on, I showed up at the San Carlos Peninsula Fellowship just ripped. Okay, and at this point, I'm covered in vomit, sweat, urine, feces. Every fluid possible is on my body because I'm such a mess when I'm on a run like that, okay? It was so disgusting. I stunk. I hadn't shaved. My face was red as a stop sign. And I remember I was trying to walk up to the fellowship, and my friend, Miss Molly, she was there. And she's like, I went to give her a hug, and she goes, I'm not giving you a hug. She was appalled and disgusted, right? And then Lee, my other friend Lee, she goes, I'll give you a hug. And she gave me a big hug. And, you know, that's unconditional love that I get from my people, you know. And I'll never forget that. And I tell that story, and I think she gets a little bit like embarrassed and emotional when I tell that story when she's in the room. But anyway, so I continued my run after that group, and I was trying to hit a Monday morning meeting. So I set my alarm. I'm over by this insurance office behind this camper. And I set my sleeping bag up down there, all my bottles of booze, and I had uncontrollable explosive diarrhea and bowel function movement and urinating and all this stuff. So I guess I can't remember if either my battery died or I forgot to set my alarm. So the employees of the insurance building showed up, and they spotted me laying over it with all these bottles and the situation, and they called the police. So the Redwood City Police shows up. And the cop is just thoroughly disgusted. So he's looking at me, and I'm laying on the pavement, and I get startled, and I wake up, and I jump up, and the officer goes, "You, what are you doing?" And he's looking around, he looks at the bottles, and he goes, "Is that shit?" And I said, "Yes, I had nowhere to go." So I'm trying to explain myself why there's these dumps all over the place. And he goes, "Pick all this shit up and clean it up and get the hell out of here." You know, this cop was so disgusted. He had rubber gloves on. He was ready to take me into custody, but he was so disgusted by the situation, he wouldn't even put his hands on me to throw me in the back of the cop car and take me to jail. So I quickly gathered my belongings. I threw a bunch of the litter over the fence. I grabbed my sleeping bag and I took off. And continued to go, drank, do what I did throughout the day. You know, time's just flying by in this 10-day period, keep in mind. So the last night, I remember I went to Walgreens again. I got more of that Advil PM. And I got back on the bus, and I went to my sleeping bag at the Palo Alto Transit Center. And I did what I did that night, and I passed out. And I came to on a Tuesday morning, and there's people going to work, going to the train station, or getting off the train and going to their place of business downtown Palo Alto. And I'm rolling around on the cement in the sleeping bag, and I see that I had vomited, and it was like this pink colored vomit from the color of the Advil PM. It was splattered all over. So first when I woke up, I thought it was blood, and some of it might have been. So I get up, and there's people. I'm surprised I didn't get arrested, or at least somebody just check on me. You know what I mean? So I get on the. Pardon my coughs too, by the way. Allergy season and stuff. So I get back on the bus, and I go buy some more booze. Get back on the bus again, and now I'm on the ECR, and I pass out, and I wake up in Daly City at the BART station. This is a long way; it's like 2.5 hour ride. And I remember I got off the Daly City BART, and my knees and my hips were completely buckled. I couldn't even walk. Like I had to grab the railing to get up and down anywhere. And I was walking like very stiff, and I couldn't flex my hips or my knees. I was scared. So what happens is the next bus going south comes down, and it was still probably about, I don't know, maybe 9:30, 10 in the morning. So the bus comes, and I remember the driver was like waiting for me to get. He thought I was like paralyzed or something. He didn't know what was going on, but I was standing up. So I'm trying to climb up the steps to the bus, and I'm holding on for dear life, and I'm trying to shift my weight all the way one way to get one leg up, and I'm getting all the way up the steps, and I finally collapsed into some seat, luckily, and I got all the way down back to the San Carlos Peninsula Fellowship for the noon meeting. So I'm just in bad shape. So I get to the noon meeting, and I remember I go to the back, and I had to do the same thing, climb up the stairs. I get to the back, and I'm up against the window, and this lady, Tracy, who I crashed at her place one night before I had gone to Palm Ave. She was living with Molly at the time. I remember I crashed up against the window. She's looking at me. She goes, "You don't look so good." And so she calls her buddy John and the late Roni. Bless your heart too, Roni. You're deceased. Man, we're talking about these deceased people. This in the last few years. It's terrible. That's like the fourth person I mentioned. So Roni and John, John was running the meeting. They had somebody else take over and finish the meeting. And John and Roni drive me up to the San Mateo Medical Center, and they basically told me that, and John was a nurse before he retired. So he told me to say that I'm fading out, or I'm belligerent or whatever, and I'd be seen sooner. Like I felt like say that I felt like I was going to faint. So I told the lady I was going to faint. I pretty much was. I was totally out of it. So I didn't realize how bad it was. So they ran some tests, and they got me admitted and the whole deal. And basically, I had no idea, but my liver and my kidneys were shutting down from drinking the Advil PM, and with the combination of the alcohol over the 10-day period. So I barely made it this time again. There was no real signs of bleeding or anything like that, but it got real close. I might not have made it through the night because everything was shutting down. I had no idea. This is the seriousness of alcoholism, is that you don't feel any pain and you don't know how fast you're going. So I got lucky. And, people questioned why I would go to meetings loaded all those years. And this is one of the reasons it was a blessing, because I got the love and support and care that I need from people who have love and compassion. This is a big part of it. So I was no longer getting sloshed all day long, jumping off the bus in the middle of the night, to relieve myself in the streets. I'm not sleeping at the airport. I'm not sleeping at the bus stop. I'm not sleeping at the transit center anymore. I remember all those times I would go to the hospital over the years. The relief of being in the hospital bed with the TV and the nurses taking care of me, knowing that I was safe for a few hours, at least, is just to get rejuvenated, to start the process over again and again and again. And so I'm on this run, and in the meantime, my buddy James DeBerry and my buddy at the time, Charlie, they were driving around the county looking for me, trying to find me. And James got me. He got me. I got out of the hospital, and I remember I went to a 10 p.m. meeting at the San Carlos Peninsula Fellowship, and I was talking after the meeting with Bree and Ken and the late Adam Escobedo. Here's number 5. And Adam and Ken were trying to hear me out as far as what was going on. And I'm telling the story about the police officer and the diarrhea and that whole situation. Bree is cracking up, laughing, right? And Ken's like, "This isn't funny. This isn't Comedy Central, But I mean, it's hard not to see the humor in this once the guy's alive and he's out of the jam. We're able to laugh at ourselves, but it was just a little bit too early for that. And so I slept outside one more night after I got out of the hospital, and James got me into the Hillsdale house, where I currently reside now, 5 years later. And I was on my way again, one more time, trying to do this deal. And that was 2015, how it started off, If drug addiction and alcoholism are not taken care of through character, and they say meeting makers make it and all that, and that's good for a little bit. For me, I had to really take a look at my character. There's nothing more frustrating than going to Narcotics Anonymous meetings and Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and not taking the steps, not applying the principles, knowing the program but not living the programs. It's really, really hard. It's so embarrassing, and it's even more frustrating than somebody who's fresh and brand new who just doesn't know any better. So I almost died again as a result. It was terrible. I was, once again, a complete derelict. And by the way, numerous people over the years are not familiar with the phrase derelict. So for those of you at home who don't feel like Googling the word derelict, let me break it down for you. Derelict is the more formal, more respectful way of referring to someone as a fucking loser. So, now that we got that cleared up, I'd like to do something fun today and just blindly open to a couple of books here. This is Drop the Rock. This is about steps 6 and 7, removing character defects. It's great for addicts and alcoholics. It doesn't have a specific selection here. Let's see what I have highlighted. This is good. Humility is acceptance of ourselves. If we are humble, we are open to new ideas and new ways of seeing things. Open-mindedness is a very important part of humility. Yet, how many of us in the program aren't open to new ideas and thoughts, especially after having been around a while? How many do we see who continue to say and do the exact same things year after year? It seems that many of us resist a clear idea of humility so we don't have to conform to it. What are the chances of me just opening up to that blindly? Of all the first thing I saw highlighted, I was just talking about doing the same thing over and over again. Let's go into the basic text, shall we? So many times addicts have sought the rewards of hard work without the labor. How sincerely we work this step will be proportionate to our desire for change. We examine the 4-step inventory and we get a good look at what these defects are doing to our lives. We should approach old defects with an open mind. Humility is a result of getting honest with ourselves. We are people who have assets and liabilities. Humility is as much a part of staying clean as food and water are to staying alive. If we truly want to be free, we will take a good look at input from fellow addicts. That's on step 6. Now, usually I don't go into the steps or the anonymous programs, but this portion of where we're at, the timeline and my suffering over the years, I thought it might be nice to kind of touch on those instead of using the outside books that I used over the years. So, anyway, I want to thank you all for joining me on the Dan Banchero Show, only on YouTube. That's just a taste of how screwed up 2015 began. It got better for a little bit, but I wasn't through finishing myself off. So I hope you all have a great weekend. I have a blessed life today. I do not intend of doing any of these things that I mentioned in the preceding episodes ever again. So take care of yourselves. Be kind to one another. We only have one life to live. And just enjoy life. All right.